recording on that. Okay, tonight we're going to do blood number 4. And this is going to be a little bit of, if you were here last summer, maybe a repeat to some degree of a Bible study I did last summer. And it's only because I just think this fits into this. And for the second week in a row, the Bible study that I was going to do got hijacked at about Monday evening. So you're going to get that Bible study. It's coming. But this one just, when you begin to pray about it and your mind's not on that particular area, then that's a good cue that you kind of need to take another look. And we're going to talk about blood covenant tonight. I actually put it on there backwards. That was the way it was in my mind. Covenant is something that in the United States of America, we don't really have a real good grasp of covenant. We understand contracts. We draw them up and says, this is what you're going to do, and this is what I'm going to do. I mean, I don't use them all the time, but people contact me about jobs, and I found that there are certain types of jobs that I need to spell out very specifically what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do, and this is the amount of money I charge you. And we tend to think of covenant maybe along those lines, but covenant is way beyond that. Covenant establishes in the old in the Bible area, covenant is more about establishing connections that are pretty much on a family type of a plane. And our best way of understanding covenant is marriage. It's basically a covenant that God gives us. That when you get married, you're essentially saying to your spouse, I'm giving you my life in exchange for your life. And that all sounds real romantic till we're past the honeymoon stage. Then all of a sudden, marriage becomes a very difficult thing. And I always say the blessed thing about marriage is that it gives you the opportunity to know another person's soul in a way that you will never know anyone else. There are things that I know about my wife and that she knows about me that none of you has any clues about, and I hope you never do. If you do, there's something seriously wrong. But we have exchanged our lives for one another. That doesn't mean that you still don't intentionally or unintentionally keep some secrets. There's things that I feel like the Lord spoke to me that I don't share with my wife because I'm afraid it will crush her. I get these little glimpses of the future now and then, and it's one of those things I feel entirely comfortable of letting those things go into the well of my soul, and they stay there. I may bring them up. I may bring them up and take a look at them occasionally. My children, I feel like God has given me visions of the future for them, and I don't tell my wife because I don't think she can handle it. Now, that's just, the woman is a weaker vessel. Don't get mad at me, ladies. The Bible says that. But there's things that she will be better off not knowing. I see ahead. Now, that doesn't mean our covenant is null and void. It just means that that's something I feel like God's given me, and I keep it there. Now, in the sense of God's covenant with us, this takes on this stage right here in Abram's life, and I did teach on this, and I even preached on it very shortly. We'll just put the Leviticus verse in your pending file there for a while. The life is in the blood. That's all we're going to say about that. But let's set the stage. And the stage is not set on Genesis 17:11. It's set on Genesis 14, I got to uncurl my corner here, verse 10, or verse 11. And the situation is here God has called Abram to live in the land of promise. Now, I was just thinking about this today. How tough would that have been? Because the first thing, and I've never thought about it till today, my guess is Abram didn't even speak the language. God is calling you to go live in a strange land. You can't even speak the language, and then he tells you, I'm going to give you this for your inheritance. Now, that is absolutely a super huge thing. So Abram at this point, moves off to this land. And in the land in that area, there is an area-wide war that Abram is not even a party to it. But at this point, his nephew Lot has separated from Abram, and he made the unwise decision to go to Sodom to live, which is the same Sodom that ends up being Sodom and Gomorrah. And these kings go to war, and they end up, I'm not even going to try to explain the faction on it, but Sodom gets overrun, and it gets pillaged, and Lot is taken as a hostage, if you will, or into slavery, or he's taken, and the possessions of that area are taken with them. Now, Abram, being the man of God, decides that I'm going to go out there against these 5 armies with 300 goat herders. It's like, now these probably aren't armies as we think about it, because we had city-states. There's a king of each city, so they had a city-state. These armies may be a few hundred to a few thousand people, but still, you're going out with 318 goat herders to go set the record straight. And Abram takes off and pursues these guys from he's at Hebron, and he ends up going all the way to Dan, which is about 200 miles. He's taking off on foot, pursuing these armies 200 miles just to get his nephew back that doesn't really respect him anyway. It's like, well, I'd probably said, that son of a gun, just let him go. But Abram went after him. Then in Genesis 15, verse 11, it says, they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food and supplies and departed. And they also took Lot, Abram's nephew, and his possessions, and departed, for he was living in Sodom. Then a fugitive came and told Abram the Hebrew. Now he was living by the oaks of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, brother of Aner, and these were allies with Abram. And Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, and he led his trained men born in his house, 318, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. He divided his forces against them by night, and his servants defeated them and pushed them back as Hobah, which is in the north of Damascus. And he brought back all the goods, and brought back his relative Lot with his possession, and also the women and the people. This was a supernatural victory. This is not, it's not common sense to go pursue 5 armies with 300 goat herders. He's on the way back, and he comes to, in Genesis 17, says, then after his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Sheba, that is the king's valley. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. Now he was a priest of God Most High, and he blessed him. Now, this is a very strange passage, to say the least. Abram's returning home, and he happens to go by this city Salem, which was a forerunner of Jerusalem. And when he comes to the King's Valley, and I'm did a little more research on this, I've always thought the King's Valley was the Valley of Kidron, and now they're not real sure. It could be the Hinnom Valley, which, if you remember our little Spock Bible study, the other valley, you have the Kidron Valley and Hinnom Valley on the other side. Doesn't really make a difference which valley it is. The Jewish historian Josephus records that Absalom built his monument there in the valley of Shavah, and that is close to the Hinnom Valley. So that would suggest maybe this was the Hinnom Valley instead of the Kidron Valley. It makes no difference. But he comes and he meets this character, Melchizedek. The Bible doesn't say much about him in just these three little verses right here. And he's the king of Salem. So if you translate his name means king of what's right or king of righteousness. And he is king of the city Salem, which translates the city of peace. Now, I've heard extensive Bible studies on people trying to explain who Melchizedek is. A lot of guessing going on. The Bible does tell us later on that he has no genealogy. Now that means one of two things. He was either created by God on the spot, or they just don't know who his folks were. But he is this king. Now this is an unusual, if I remember right, this is the first mention of priest in the Bible. And a priest is a person who mediates between God and man. And he comes out to Abram, and it's odd here that the king of Sodom's along with him. The king of Sodom has got to have his say there. It's just like the devil is going to try to interfere with what God's doing here. But it's almost like Abram just blows off the king of Sodom. And this Melchizedek character, he brings out bread and wine. Now, he was a priest of God Most High. Now, bread and wine, does that sound like any other event in the Bible? When Jesus says, "This is my covenant," they partook of the bread and the wine. He says, the wine is my blood. The bread is my body of this covenant. Now, if you study the Bible very much, you're going to figure out there's all these types and shadows. And then Melchizedek is like the first of a three-part type. Like I said, we don't know where it comes from. A lot of people speculate that maybe this was a pre-incarnate manifestation of Jesus, what they call a Christophany. I'm not real sure about that. I mean, it possibly, yes, but I wouldn't bet good money on it. I do think, like when Joshua appeared at Jericho and the angel of the Lord comes, I think that's Jesus there telling him, when Joshua asked him, "Are you with us or against us?" And he says, "No." The question is, "Are you with me?" I think that's most likely a Christophany. This, I don't know. But he is a type and shadow. If you go through the Bible, it goes from him to David, and then to Christ, which David is an amazing character. When you look at it, he was an adulterer and a murderer, but yet God says he is a man after my own heart. Now, the crazy thing that David did, all those years after the conquest of the land, the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle stood at Shiloh, or Shiloh, I guess is correctly saying. We're from Ohio, so we can say Shiloh. It was there. Well, David becomes king, and he says, "Let's go get the Ark of the Covenant and move it up to my house," which was totally against what the law of Moses prescribed. David throws a tent over it and goes in and sits in the very presence of God, and God's pleased with it. It's like you read these Psalms and it's like, he's sitting right there You know, he's not quoting it. He wrote it. Psalm 110, thou art a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek. He's sitting in there in front of that Ark of the Covenant, and I think he's having visions of Jesus and what God is doing in the future. It's incredible. But this character, he brings out bread and wine. And Abram does the most crazy thing. It says he gave them a tenth of all. Now, this is the first mention of tithing. And tithing is one of those things, I respect the way it's been taught places and even been taught in this church, but I think we look at it wrong. It is a response to what God has done. It's just, I would use an example. When I was a young man and I heard my wife's testimony of her healing on the radio, I knew that God was real. I didn't know what to do about it, so I just started tithing. 20-year-old men don't just suddenly decide to start giving God 10% of their money, but I look back now, that was a biblical thing that just happened. God had won a supernatural victory, and it's the only thing that I could think to do. Because I darn sure wasn't going to get born again at that point. I thought I could appease God by making an offering. And this is so, nobody told Abram to do that. It was his response to what God had done in his life. Okay, Abram basically tells the king of Sodom, I don't want your stuff. You take your stuff and go home. Okay. Let's go down to Hebrews 7. I better open my Bible and make sure I got the right numbers on there. How embarrassing. Yeah, I am pretty sure it's Hebrews 7. Hebrews are after the T's. Hebrews chapter 7, verse 1, for this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of God Most High, who met Abram, or the author of Hebrews calls him Abraham at this point, as he was returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him, to whom also Abram apportioned a tenth part of all the spoils, was first of all by the translation of his name, King of Righteousness, and then also King of Salem, which is King of Peace. Verse 3 says, without father, without mother, without genealogy. Now, how literally do you take that? I'm kind of a literalist when I read the Bible. Is the author of Hebrews saying, this is Jesus? Maybe. They definitely don't know who his father and mother is. Having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but he was made like the Son of God, who abides a priest perpetually. So this is a forerunner. Now, the neat thing about this is the new covenant is actually the old covenant. God establishes the new covenant with Abraham, which is based upon belief. It's based upon faith. Now, he comes to this forerunner guy, and then it says, did God just raise up a priest? God would be able to just speak the word and a priest would be raised up. Who knows? Don't get real caught up on it. Luke chapter 22. Verse 19. And then he, being Jesus, had taken some of the bread and given thanks. He broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Now, tonight is kind of sitting meditating on this thing. The thought occurred to me, did Abraham even have a clue what was just happening? I mean, you talk about a blind squirrel finding a nut. God arranges it so he's returning home and he passes right by the city of Salem, and this character Melchizedek comes out, and I can imagine Abram almost walked away and said, "I wonder what that was all about." And today he probably sits in heaven. Oh, for crying out loud, I wish I had known that at the time, what was going on here, that this is a foreshadow of the covenant that Jesus is going to establish with his people. It says, and when he had taken some bread and given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And in the same way he took the cup after they had eaten, saying, "This cup which is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood." Okay. All right, let's go over to Genesis chapter 15. I gotta get another Bible where all the pages are attached. Okay. After this, it says, verse 1, after these things, the Lord of the Word came to Abraham in a vision, saying, "Do not fear, Abram, I am a shield to you. Your reward is very great." And Abram said, "O Lord God, what wilt thou give me, since I am childless, and the heir of my house is Eleazar of Damascus?" A very arrogant thing for Abram to say, in my opinion. God bless him. So when he asked, "What is my reward?" God turns around and he says, verse 3, since Abram said, "Since thou hast given no offspring to me, one born in my house is my heir," then behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "This man will not be your heir, but one who comes forth from your own body, he shall be your heir." Now, Abram at this point was already an old man, and his wife was an old woman. But it says this crazy thing, verse 5, he took him outside and said, "Now look towards the heavens and count the stars, if you're able to count them." And he said to them, "So shall your descendants be." And in verse 6, then he believed in the Lord, and he reckoned it to him as righteousness. It's like, if you've ever listened to me very much, you know reckon is like one of my favorite words in the Bible, because reckon is a banking term or an accounting term. And I always use the example, like my business, we can tell you to the penny how much money got at any given second. Okay, right there it is. My personal checking account, well, maybe not. I don't keep track of it that close. Now you can get it on your phone. Things are a lot better these days. But I, for years, have opened my bank statement, and whatever the bank says that I have, that's what I've adjusted my mind to believe that I have. Now, it's a terrible thing to do, because over the years we have found dozens of errors that the bank has made. They make a ton of them. Now, fortunately, most of them are 10 cents or something, and it's not worth the bother of trying to fix it. For their part or our part, it's like, hey, here's a dime. Go away. But the word reckon I understand because I adjust my account to believe what the bank has already said about me. Now, this is a great deficiency in the kingdom of God. Because like we shared here a few weeks ago, we get born again and there is this supernatural event. Everybody that's been through it, they know what it's like. You know when God comes into your... I remember that night very keenly about the Spirit of God just coming and being in His presence. And I had absolutely no doubt that Jesus Christ had come into me and united with my spirit, and I was born again. I mean, maybe you didn't have that vivid of a experience, but I did. You know, I had... Then in my case, you wake up and you go try to live the Christian life according to your smarts and will and your abilities, and you fail miserably at it. You get into salvation by a supernatural experience, and you're going to complete your course of salvation by supernatural experiences. Now, Abram was not here with, totally off the hook with nothing to do. Abram had some things that he had to do. One of them is he had to stay in the land that God brought him to. And sometimes as Christians, that's a tough thing for us. We don't want to stay in the land that God brought us to. I don't like it here. I want my situation changed. I want a new job. I want a new house. I want a new wife. I want new kids. That might be tough. I want a new car. I want out of this. But God has brought us to a point that He's saying, you need to work through this. Okay. So Abraham believed God, and it's reckoned to him as righteousness. In verse 7, he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to possess it. Do you realize how big of a statement that is? I've brought this old man from a foreign land to live in this place where he doesn't even, maybe he's learned the language by now, but he doesn't even know the language. And I am going to give you this land because this is the land of promise. And then Abraham, he said in verse 8, and he said, O Lord, how may I know that I shall possess it? Now I think, when God shows us things that maybe He's calling us to, this is a fair question to ask of God. How may I know it? Because we know concepts and reality is sometimes fleeting. Abraham is just asking for a little bit of reality here. You're asking me to believe something that is off the scale. I need a tidbit to help me with this. And I don't think there's anything wrong with us asking God for that. When I was thinking about this, I hearkened back to my wife's not here again. We can talk about her. But when she got healed, I never, that was 40 years ago. People didn't live through cancer unless it was something you could surgically remove. I didn't know anybody that survived cancer like that. Well, I was in love with the girl. But that thought in the back of my mind, she's just going to die of cancer later on. The devil's putting that thought there. And I struggled with that. Do I want to get involved with somebody that's going to create this kind of a hardship down the road? I'm just being realistic. And then when I finally got to the point that I said, God, this woman drives me nuts. If she's not for me, get her out of my sight. I cannot stand her. The Lord came to me in a very real dream, like He did Abraham, and revealed what He was going to do. I can still see those images as vivid today. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. And I said, okay, God, I got my real moment. I moved from concept into reality. I moved from a head idea to yada. I had an intimate knowledge about what God was doing. And all of a sudden, I become a tiger in my faith. This is not good. Okay, never mind. I'm going to get all choked up here, so I'm going to go on. All right. Wow. How will I know that I will possess it? And the Lord said to him, bring me a 3-year-old heifer. Now think about this. You're out there and you ask God, how am I going to know this? Well, bring me a cow. What? Bring me a cow, bring me a she-goat, bring me a ram, and a couple of birds. And this is how you're going to know. Now, this may have meant more to Abram than I may have been selling him a little bit short here, because this actually was a common event in those days. This is what's called and this is a fancy word, and I didn't make it up. I just found it. It's suzerain vassal covenant. And all it means is this is a covenant between a much superior party and a much lesser party. And you think about it, that's not much of a covenant, because what does the lesser party have to give the greater party? You think about it, and when Christ's time in Israel, they were kind of in this situation. Rome was in control of everything, but Rome let Judea have a certain amount of control within its provinces. They had Herod, their own ruler. They had their own religion. They had their own customs and culture, which Rome was okay. Hey, we'll let you do all that stuff. You just pay us your tax money. Kind of like it is in the United States. No, never mind. Just give us your tax money and we'll leave you alone, is basically what Rome's situation was. So Rome was the suzerain, or the greater, more powerful, and Israel was the vassal in this case. And in Abram's case, God obviously is a suzerain and Abram's a vassal. He really didn't have anything to offer God. So, he comes and he makes this covenant with him in this, okay. Verse 10, and then he brought all these to him and cut them in two and laid each half opposite each other, but he did not cut the birds. And the birds of prey came down upon the carcasses, and Abram drove them away. Now, when God's moving in your life, expect some resistance from the enemy. It's going to be up to you to drive away the birds off of the carcasses. You can't sit back and say, well, that's too bad. It was Abram's responsibility to do this. Okay, so why that? In Jeremiah 18 or 34, you don't have to turn there because it's just one verse and the context doesn't even really have much to do with it, but it makes this statement. Jeremiah 34:18, I will give the men who have transgressed my covenant, who have not fulfilled my words, the words of the covenant which they made before me, when they cut the calf in two and passed between its parts. So in those days, it was custom, when you made a covenant with another person, you split the animal in two, and you together walked down that trail of blood between the halves of the carcasses, and you're basically saying, this is how serious a covenant is. It's my life for your life. If I fail to keep up my end of this covenant, they're saying, may what's happened to these animals happen to me. You're actually kind of pronouncing a curse upon yourself by doing so. So this is a very serious thing. And how much Abram understood of this, I don't know, but he may have understood the process here. Okay. Now, when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram. Behold, terror and great darkness fell upon him. Isn't that just the way the thing goes? I'm just about to have this great time with God and enter into this covenant with God, and doggone it, I fell asleep. Do you suppose Abraham woke up and, oh my gosh, I slept through it? Yeah, maybe, I don't know. All right. Then verse 13, God said to Abram, know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, where they will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. This was fulfilled to the very day. Now, if you read the Bible, it says that they were in Egypt 430 years. They lived as free people for the first 30, and then a ruler arose who did not know Joseph and enslaved him, so they lived in slavery for 400 years. Verse 14, I will also judge a nation whom they serve, and afterwards they will come out with many possessions. And as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age. Then in the 4th generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorite is not yet complete. And it came about when the sun had set and it was very dark, behold, there appeared a smoking oven and a flaming torch which passed between the pieces. And on that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your descendants I have given this land from the river of Egypt as far as the great river Euphrates. Now think about this. What is the land of promise? The river of Egypt is the Nile. So God is saying, I have given you this land from the Nile in Egypt to the Euphrates River, which, if I believe right, is in Iraq. That whole area was given to Israel as a promise. Now, because of disobedience on their part, they're down to a little piece the size of New Jersey. Okay. To the Canaanite, the Gizite, all the ites, and it goes down there. The last one of those is the Jebusites, and the Jebusites are the residents of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the place that God has chosen to establish his name in all the earth. Now, this is a strange thing. Abram goes into this deep sleep, and he sees this torch and this smoking oven going through these pieces here. And the problem of it is he wakes up and said, I didn't take part in this covenant. You're right. By God passing between the pieces alone, he's taking on the full responsibility of the blood issues of this covenant. Basically, God is saying, you're not going to be able to keep this covenant with me. But I am going to pay the price, the blood price of my son for you, so that you can continue to keep the covenant. And us, being descendants now of Abraham by faith, are in that covenant. Okay. Wow. Okay. Wow. Do you think that Abram was a little supercharged from this event? Now, all those years and how, God said, but I haven't seen anything that would suggest that I'm going to get to this land. And it's like God is now making this promise. You are going to have descendants, but I'm barren. I'm giving you this land. I don't even speak the language. I'm going to bless you and your descendants and those after you. It was a tremendous night. All right. couple points there at the end. God alone, by God passing alone, he indicates that he alone is responsible to bring those promises to fruition. Now, that doesn't mean you're off the hook. Number one, you have to dwell in the land, and you have to have faith in God that he will do those things. Now, when you look at your life and you think, oh my gosh, God's never going to make anything out of me. I'm so worthless. I can't believe anything. I can't understand anything. I can't do anything. You're absolutely right. You can't. But your faith in God can make that possible. Okay. By God passing alone, he indicates that when the sons of Abraham break the covenant, that he will give his life, Jesus, for the payment. And God unveils the plans for his people. In Galatians 3:29, if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's descendants, heirs according to the promise. So we have a connection clear back to these events. That in faith, Abraham went out and dwelled into the land. So therefore, in faith, in our faith through what the blood of Jesus has done for us, we can accomplish the will of God in our life. So the work of God in our lives is by faith in the blood of Christ's sacrifice. So, amen. I'm done. Yeah.
But, between David and Jesus, there was a lot of wicked people.
Oh my.
But I know there's always a remnant. And I'm thinking about those remnant who knew this covenant, and how if they ever thought God has given up on us.
Yes.
And it's the same with us. Like sometimes we go along and it's kind of like, I think God's given up on me.
You think about what has to have been the Jewish mentality since the destruction of the temple in 70 AD until today. And you think, I just read that again today, that the number of Jews in the world has not recovered from what it was pre-Holocaust days. Right? That is astounding when you think about it. Amen.